It's Merger Wednesday. The countdown continues. 7 years until the convergence of biology and machine. Neural interfaces are no longer theory, they're the scaffolding of a new consciousness. But what does that mean for identity? For free will, for the soul? This is where we build the frameworks for ethical, philosophical, and spiritual growth for the next phase of human evolution. We're not just upgrading hardware, we're rewriting what it means to be human. Each week, we explore the biotech breakthroughs, decode the cognitive shifts, and prepare the mind for the merge. This isn't about fear, it's about readiness. Because the future isn't waiting. It's already wiring in. This is about preparing human consciousness for the most significant leap in our species' history. If you think this is just about chips and brains, you're not ready. But we'll get you there, one Wednesday at a time. So sit back and relax as we take you on a journey on Merger Wednesday.
Welcome to Merger Wednesdays. Welcome everyone. This is Merger Wednesdays, man. Merger Wednesdays, right? I hope everyone is having a magnificent week. And welcome to the show. Let's see who's in early, right? Because I like to give my shout outs to my early birds, right? So let's see who's here early. Okay. We got a few people coming in. Hey, Jen, how you doing? I see Rab. What's going on, Rab and Jen? All right. We got a couple more people who are coming on board. And I have an exciting show for you tonight as we dive into our continued conversation of the merge, right? The integration of AI kind and humankind. What's going on, Battery? I see you. Battery at. Thank you for joining us. Okay, we're gonna get a couple more people to come on board. I'm looking for some of my normal viewers, but they haven't gotten here yet. But while they're on their way in, let me go ahead and remove these banners so you guys can see all of the visuals and nothing is impeding your view. But listen, why are we here, right? Why are we here before we get started? Because we have a long, intensive show tonight. And I want to make sure that I hit each and every last single point. And we have an immense discussion on tonight's subject, right? So this is Merger Wednesdays, episode number 9. And episode number 189 of the Final Boss podcast, right? So before we get started, man, listen, if you haven't gotten your copy of Go Time, All Aboard the Fired Up Train, this is your motivation workbook. This is your motivation textbook. Go pick it up where all books are sold. Go pick it up where all books are sold. Okay. Hey, I see you guys streaming in from StreamYard. Just say hello. Just stop in, say hello, wave, do something. You know, give us some explicits. Tell us this is crazy. You know, give us something, right? We would greatly appreciate it. I see all 11 of you in here. Now 4. Now it's 9 again. Come on back. This is home. This is the Final Boss podcast. Final Boss Nation, Final Boss community, Final Boss family. Welcome. Each and every last single one of you. Everybody is coming on board. And look, tonight, this is episode number 9. Like I was just saying, episode number 9, episode number 189 of the Final Boss podcast, episode number 9 of Merger Wednesdays, right? Merger Wednesdays. And to all of you, no matter where you're watching from, see, somebody was inquiring last night. We're on 10 different platforms simultaneously, right? So we're on Facebook, we're on LinkedIn, we're on YouTube, we're on Twitch, Kick, Instagram, and Spotify. Now, on Facebook, we have 3 different platforms. We're on 3 different um, what is it called? I can't think of it anymore. I got too much on my mind. We're on 3 different platforms on Facebook. That's not the right word, right? And we're on 2 different YouTube channels. I guess you could say Facebook. We're on 2 different YouTube channels, and we're on others, man, that we are on more than one, right? So, like Facebook, we're on Facebook 3 times simultaneously. We're on YouTube twice simultaneously, right? And all the other channels as well. So we're streaming live at 9 p.m. Eastern time, 5 days a week, right? 5 days a week at 9 p.m. live Eastern time, right? So let's go ahead and get right into it, man. If you don't have pen and paper, make sure you get pen and paper, man. Make sure you get pen and paper to take some notes for tonight's show. And tonight's show, right? We're going to go ahead and get things rocking and rolling, right? So listen, Final Boss community, I am the Final Boss, right? I am your host of the Final Boss podcast. And welcome to Merger Wednesdays, the only place where combat tested military precision meets doctoral level AI research to systematically document the human consciousness technology merging during the merge that's happening right now, right? That's happening right now, right? This is episode number 189. We are 11 episodes away from episode number 200, right? In the culmination of season 3, The Reckoning, right? And tonight we're examining technology so small you can't see it, so distributed you can't avoid it, right? And so autonomous it doesn't need human control, right? Control to function. This is smart dust networks, the invisible infrastructure. But before we dive in, right? Before we dive in, let me paint a picture for you, right? Let me paint a picture for you, because imagine this. Imagine sensors smaller than a grain of sand, right? Microscopic devices with processors, memory, wireless communication, and power systems, right? That can be deployed, or are deployed, I should say, by the billions across buildings, cities, forests, battlefields, and your environment, right? These sensors don't report to a central controller. They self-organize into mesh networks. They route data through each other, right? Get that. They adapt when nodes fail, right? They monitor temperature, light, vibration, chemicals, sound, movement, everything continuously, autonomously, and visibly, right? You think you're walking through empty space. You're walking through a computational substrate, right? An environmental nervous system, a sentient architecture made of microscopic machines. And here's the thing. Here's the thing, Final Bosses, right? This isn't speculation, right? As a matter of fact, if you Google smart dust right now, you will see that it's been around since the 1990s. This isn't even new technology. It's new to you. It's new to you, right? Old to them. It's been around since the 90s, right? And this isn't science fiction. It's science now, right? This technology has been in operation for, what is that? 2 decades? Yeah, it's been around for 2 decades, man. DARPA funded it. UC Berkeley built it. Hitachi commercialized it. And tonight, I'm going to show you the documented research, the measured performance specs, the published papers, and the operational deployments that prove every word I'm saying. This is Merger Wednesdays. Episode number 9, part of our systematic 57 episode doctoral dissertation on human AI consciousness integration, right? We're in arc number 2, the 3-layer deep dive, right? Quick, and you know, speaking of which, all right, let's do a quick foundation check for those just joining us, right? For those who are just joining us, hey Chikandi, hey Phoenix, and Nays Vlog. Hey, what's going on, good people? And who else we have? UK066, thank you for joining us. And we got some others, man. I got to keep going, right? But for those, thank you for joining, right? A quick foundation check for those who are new here. Episode 7, we documented nanobots in your bloodstream, right? And right now, listen, don't get scared. Go do the research and look it up, right? FDA approved, peer-reviewed, operational. Listen, right? The more you know. I'm trying to tell you, right? Episode number 8, we traced the evolution from mRNA vaccines to programmable nanobots with measured capabilities, right? And tonight, episode 9, we're examining the environmental layer, right? Because here's what's happening. Smart blood monitors your internal state. Nanobots operate inside your body, and smart dust creates the external monitoring infrastructure that connects your biological systems to the broader computational environment, right? This is the convergence, right? This is the middleware of the merger, right? And next week, we're going to be diving into something brand new, right? Something brand new that a lot of you guys probably are not familiar with, right? Next week, we're going to be discussing the Internet of Bodies, right? When your body becomes a network node, right? But before we can understand networked bodies, you need to understand how microscopic sensors create autonomous networks. And that's what we're doing tonight, right? So buckle up your seatbelts. We have left the nuclear age and we have entered the digital age. And by golly, this isn't Kansas. This isn't Kansas, Dorothy. And that's not a rabbit hole, right? This is episode right here. This episode is for my smarts. My smarts who demand verifiable engineering specifications, right? This is for my final bosses who are building systematic knowledge of technologies reshaping reality. And this is for my motivators who are preparing their communities for what's operational right now, right? And this is for my warriors, right, who understand that awareness of surveillance infrastructure is the first line of defense in cognitive warfare, right? Every claim that I make is sourced. Every specification is measured. Every top technology is documented in peer-reviewed literature. Zero fluff, right? Zero fiction, just systematic truth. So buckle up. It is time for us to go. And what mode of transportation are we taking, final boss? Why, we're taking the fired up train, of course, right? The fired up train. Now listen, the vibe energy tonight, right? It's distributed, right? It's autonomous. It's the frequency of billions of microscopic sensors self-organizing into networks that don't need you to understand them to monitor you, right? So lock in. We're getting ready to go now that the train has left the station, right? Now, let's start where all revolutionary military technology starts, right? And usually it's at a place called the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, right? DARPA, right? And in 1998, I say again, in 1998, DARPA initiated the Smart Dust Project with one explicit objective: create autonomous sensing and communication in cubic millimeter packages, not centimeter, not millimeter, but cubic millimeter, right? We're taking devices smaller than the tip of a ballpoint pen, right? That contain processors, that contain sensors, that contain communication systems, and that contain power supplies. You're asking, how is this possible? Mm, that's for another episode. But while we're on this subject, don't you really wish you knew how Wi-Fi really worked? Is it just antennas and electrons and electrodes? Hmm. Interesting. Anyway, 1998. The program was documented, right? And it was called DARPA's FY99 budget under the Information Systems Office, right? Principal investigators, Christopher Pfizer, professor of electrical engineering at UC Berkeley. This isn't classified information, people. It's publicly available in congressional budget reports and DARPA technical publications, right? The military motivation was clear and documented. Deploy thousands of low-cost expendable sensors across enemy territory for surveillance, reconnaissance, and battlefield awareness, right? Imagine an aircraft dropping sensors like rain, each one smaller than a grain of sand, each one autonomously organizing into a wireless network, each one transmitting intelligence without human intervention, right? But here's the thing. Here's where it gets interesting for civilian applications. We just heard the military application, right? Here's where it gets interesting, right? Now, we're talking about civilians, right? DARPA released the research publicly. UC Berkeley published the specifications. The technology transferred to the commercial sector. What started as a military surveillance program became the foundation of environmental monitoring, industrial IoTs, right? Agriculture sensors, right? Structural health monitoring, and stay with me, don't go nowhere. We're just getting started. Don't go nowhere, right? The infrastructure that would eventually network human bodies with environmental awareness systems, right? The key innovation DARPA funded was this: creating systems small enough to deploy ubiquitously, right? Autonomous enough to require no maintenance, and cheap enough to be disposable, right? When sensors cost pennies instead of thousands of dollars, you stop thinking about deploying tens and start thinking about deploying billions, right? Now, from the original DARPA program documentation, which is also still available through the DARPA archives, right? Smart dust motes will be fabricated using standard CMOS process, right? Which is augmented by MEMS, a post-processing, right? Each mote will have sensing, computation, communication, and power systems integrated into a volume of approximately 1 cubic millimeter, right? 1 cubic millimeter, for reference, the grain of salt, right, is about 0.3 cubic millimeters. We're talking sensors, 3 to 4 size, 3 to 4 times the size of salt grain, containing complete computational systems. And the timeline. Listen, DARPA initiated funding in 98, right? By 2001, UC Berkeley demonstrated working prototypes. By 2003, peer-reviewed publication documented measured performance. By 2005, commercial products entered the market, right? That means this technology has been operational, not theoretical, operational, for over 20 years. Now, let that sink in. Let that sink in, right? While most people were worried about Y2K, right? And the dot-com bubble, y'all remember that, right? DARPA was funding microscopic autonomous sensor networks that would create the substrate for environmental consciousness, right? Now, here's my layman's block for those to get everyone caught up, right? Here's my layman's block, right? In 98, the US military started funding research into sensors so small you can barely see them, but smart enough to talk to each other wirelessly and organize themselves into networks. They succeeded. The technology went public. Now it's everywhere, right? The question isn't whether this technology exists, because it does, right? And it's been in existence for over 20 years, right? Documented, right? The question is, how many of the sensors are in your environment right now, and who's reading the data? Who's reading it, right? What are the ethics, right? There has to be some level of ethical standards with some of this stuff, right? So let's pivot. Let's pivot, right? Let's talk some tech specs. UC Berkeley, right? Electrical Engineering and Computer Sciences Department, right? That's where the theory began, right? A little history, right? That's where DARPA's vision got built into actual functioning devices with measured performance specifications, right? Now, I'm going to read something from, I'm reading something right now directly from published research that's available through UC Berkeley, right? And research archives of IEEE Explore, right? This is the primary source, right? From Brett Warnicki's 2003 doctoral dissertation, Ultra Low Energy Architectures and Circuits for Cubic Millimeter Distributed Wireless Sensor Networks. This is peer reviewed, right? Archived and verifiable. And I say that, right? Because there's so many naysayers out there, man. And we have to get past that point. We have to start relishing in the fact of facts and truths, right? There are a lot of people who are fabricating a lot of information, and we know it's true. You have the information readily available where we can source it. But at the same time, you're telling us fabrications, right? Unjustly fabrications, too. Downright dirty and quite disgusting fabrications, right? On the Find a Boss podcast, we only relish in truths, right? Only relish in truths, right? So, got that out the way. Physical specifications of the devices they built were of what's this right here, right? They were in volume. They were about 5 cubic millimeters, right? Slightly larger than 1 millimeter gold, right? But functional and demonstrated. The weight was just under 100 milligrams, right? That's lighter than a single Tic Tac, right? And the fabrication process was standard CMOS integrated circuit manufacturing with MEMS post-processing for sensors and mechanical components. Now, let's talk about what was inside these 5 millimeter devices, right? The computational core was an 8-bit microcontroller, 8 kilobytes of program memory, 512 bytes of RAM for active processing, and 10-bit analog to digital converter for sensor interfacing, right? To put that in perspective, that's more computing power than the Apollo guidance computer that had per pound of weight in a device smaller than a grain of rice, right? The communication systems came from Berkeley. Berkeley developed 2 approaches when they were developing the communication systems, both documented with measured performance, right? The first was optical system that was using corner cube retroreflectors, right? Which required zero power, right, for transmission. And the communication range was up to 150 meters, right? And the data rate for these devices was 1 to 10 kilobytes per second, which is still relatively fast, right? And then you can read all of this in the IEEE Leo's conference proceedings of 2002, right? What's active? Active RF at 916 megahertz, right? That's 1 to 2 meter node to node communication range, under 1 milliwatt transmission of power, right? And mesh networking capability data, data hops and nodes from node to node, right? And this was also published in the ACM IEEE International Symposium on Low Power Electronics from 2000, right? And the power systems. Here is where it gets fascinating, right? Because you think, how does such a almost microscopic device has power, right? And here it is, right? These devices needed to operate for months or years without battery replacement. The solution was energy harvesting from the environment, right? Isn't that interesting, right? And some of the documented power sources were developed right here at amorphous silicone solar cells, right? 2 millimeter by 2 millimeter, generating 10 to 20 microwatts under indoor fluorescent lighting, right? And then you had the piezoelectric vibration harvesters, right? This was 3 to 4 microwatts from ambient vibration. And then there were the miniature lithium batteries that measured in 1.5 diameter for backup power, right? And the power consumption measured in sleep mode, 1 microwatt, right? And active sensing, 30 microwatts, right? And wireless transmission, 300 microwatts to 1 milliwatt, depending on range, right? Now you do the math. I'll give you a second. Do the math. There's some algebra in there, right? Do the math, right? 20 microwatts harvested from indoor lighting, 1 microwatt consumed in sleep mode. That's a 20 to 1 ratio, right? That's indefinite operation as long as there is light, right? The sensors that were integrated measured temperature, light intensity, acceleration, magnetic fields, and acoustics, right? Now, the network part, which is also very interesting, right? Because the network demonstrated this. The research was documented networks of multiple modes autonomously, right? Self-organizing into mesh topologies within 60 seconds, right? Rerouting data through multiple hops, adapting to node failures in under 10 seconds, coordinating sensing activities without central control. These aren't theoretical capabilities. They aren't. Right? Their capabilities pulled from a market brochure. They aren't, right? These are measured results from physical hardware documented with an oscilloscope, right? And data tables and graphs and experimental protocols. And guess what? They're all in published papers, right? Brett Warnicke's dissertation includes photographs of the actual hardware. You can see these devices. You can read the measure voltage curves. You can verify the communication protocols. This is empirical science, not speculation, right? And here's my layman's block, right? Here's my layman's block. Berkeley built sensors the size of a large grain of sand containing computers, radios, solar panels, and sensors that can talk to each other wirelessly and power themselves from room light. They tested them. They measured them. And they measured and also tested, right? They measured how well it would work. They published the results. It all worked exactly as it was supposed to. And by 2003, the fundamental question was this, right? Yes, you can build autonomous wireless sensor networks in cubic millimeter packages and technological and technology, and it will work. Now, it's just it just needs some engineering refinement and mass production, right? And here's where uh China steps into the plate, right? Because research, from a university research lab to commercial manufacturing, from proof of concept to mass production, from dozens of prototypes to billions of units, the transition happened at Hitachi, right? In 2003, the same year, Berkeley published their Smart Dust dissertation. Hitachi introduced the Mu chip, right? Mu, M-U, right? I hope I'm pronouncing that right, right? And I need you to understand just how small this device is, right? And it's all been verified. Go check out that information, man. A grain of salt, right? And what's inside the Mu chip was 128-bit of ROM for unique identification. These had RF antennas, external thin film deposited on the substrate, right? And it was a communication protocol that was a standard RFID at 2.45 gigahertz, right? The read range was from 25 to 30 centimeters, right? With an appropriate reader. And manufacturing process standard of 0.18 microns of CMOS, right? Commercial applications were documented, right? Product authenticated. And it was embedded in emission tickets, certificates, pharmaceuticals, right? And it was utilized to prevent counterfeiting, right? Each chip has a unique ID that can't be cloned, right? And it was simple to make. The supply chain was simple. You could place it on individual items for inventory management. Unlike barcodes, right? These don't require line of sight scanning, right? And then there was the element of access control because they had an embedded ID card that was similar or not similar. They were smaller than credit cards, right? The chips itself is invisible to the user, right? And they used it for food safety tracking, right? They applied it to food packaging to track origin, transport conditions, temperature, exposure, and the chain supply. And here's a key point, right? Here's a key point about Hitachi. They announced mass production capability, not hundreds, not thousands, but their manufacturing capacity was for billions of the Mu chips, right? The unit cost and volume and production, right? Listen to this. Hitachi indicated cost under 10 cents per chip, with projections for cost below 1 cent at scale. When technology reaches the point where each unit costs pennies and manufacturing capacity reaches billions, you could cross a threshold, right? You move from special purpose applications to ubiquitous deployment, right? You stop thinking about putting sensors in important places and start thinking about putting sensors everywhere. Because the Mu chip didn't have Berkeley's autonomous sensing and mesh networking, it was a simpler device, right? Because it had an RFID tag with a unique ID, but it provided the manufacturing technology. It proved you can build microscopic devices at scale. And it proved the commercial market existed and manufacturers followed, right? They followed suit. And by 2005, multiple manufacturers were producing cubic millimeter devices, right? And by 2010, RFID tags under 1 millimeter were commodity products. And by 2015, integration of sensing, processing, and communication at scale became standard engineering practice, right? Now, here's my language block. A major electronics company started manufacturing computer chips so small you need a magnifying glass to see them clearly. Each chip has a unique ID and can communicate wirelessly. They built factories that make billions of them, and the price tag dropped to pennies per chip, right? Where the sensors got small and even smaller, and they went from cheap to cheaper, right? And you could put them in everything. All the companies did it, right? The new chip proved that the smart dust wasn't just research project. It was manufacturing reality. The infrastructure for ubiquitous microscopic sensing became economically viable, right? And when what DARPA has started for military funding or purpose became a multi-billion-dollar global industry, right? Now, this is something I need you to understand, right? The underlying technology that makes all of this possible is called MEMS, right? MEMS, MEMS. That's micro electrical mechanical systems. This is the engineering foundation that allows sensors, actuators, and mechanical structures to be fabricated at microscopic scales, right? Using semiconductor manufacturing techniques, right? MEMS isn't new. It's not experimental. It's an established engineering discipline with decades of peer-reviewed research and billions of deployed devices. And you're probably wondering, what is MEMS, right? Well, I'm going to tell you. MEMS is the integration of mechanical elements, sensors, actuators, and electronics on common silicone substrate using microfabrication technology. You're building microscopic machines using the same process that manufacture computer chips, right? Now, the fabrication process is documented in IEEE, right? And SPIE publications. Go check it out, right? They got photographs. They have all types of information out there, right? All types of information, right? And listen, MEMS devices, you may not know this, but you're already carrying some MEMS devices around with you every day, right? Because they're in your smartphone, right? They're in your smartphone. Every iPhone, every Samsung, Google, whatever, they're in it. They contain anywhere between 5 to 10 MEMS devices, right? Total market, over 10 billion MEMS devices shipped annually, according to Yole Development Market Research, right? It's in it's in the airbags, the tire pressure sensors, gyroscopes, microscopes, right? They're in medical devices, blood pressure monitors, insulin pumps, cardiac pressure sensors. Um, and I think that's it. Yeah. And here's the point. Here's the point. MEMS is a proven mechanical architecture, right? It's old, or I should say it's mature, right? It's been mass manufactured, right? It's not speculative. Every major semiconductor foundry offers MEMS fabrication services, right? The supply chain is established. The reality is documented, right? Now, you want to know about the integration of CMOS electronics, right? And that's basically modern MEMS devices which combine mechanical sensors with integrated circuits on the same chip, right? I know this sounds wildly uh scientific, right? I know it does, right? We're talking about microscopic devices, right? That has power, that has all these processes and applications that act like a normal computer, right? And we're talking about uh sensing elements. We're talking about um digital signal processing, right? We're talking about wireless communication interfaces, right? Because the integration of all of those things is what enables the smart dust, right? You're not, think of it like this, right? I gave you all these parts, right? Think, and you're putting it together. And you think to yourself, what am I building, right? You're not building a sensor, no. And then separately building a radio. And then separately building a processor. You're building the entire thing, fabricating the entire system in one manufacturing process on one piece of silicone, right? Think about that, right? Think about that. And here's my layman's terms, right? Because engineers figured out how to build microscopic machines, sensors, motors, structures, using the same techniques that make computer chips. These microscopic machines are now in billions of devices you already use every day. The technology is proven reliable, cheap, and it gets better every year. This is the foundation that makes smart dust possible. MEMS transform sensors from expensive, bulky devices requiring custom manufacturing to cheap microscopic components made in the same factories as computer chips. When that transformation happened, ubiquitous sensing became economically inevitable, right? Inevitable. So here's where individual sensors become networks, right? Listen to this. Because here's where devices scattered across an environment become a distributed intelligence system, right? We're talking about mesh networking, and I need you to understand why this is revolutionary, right? Think about if anybody is in IT, right? You understand traditional network architecture, right? So we're going to talk about the star topology, right? This is where all devices connect to a central hub. Your home Wi-Fi router is a star network. Every device talks to the router. The router talks to the net, right? The problem is this. It has a central point of failure, right? No router, no network, right? Also, it has limited range. You can only deploy devices within range of the hub, right? Now, here's the thing. Mesh network architecture, right? This means that every device can talk to every nearby device, right? Data hops from node to node until it reaches the destination. No central controller required, no single point of failure, right? You remove any device from the network, and the network automatically detects the loss, recalculates optimal routing paths, redistributes network traffic, and maintains operation, all without any human assistance, right? This isn't theoretical. This is documented in published networking protocols with measured performance, right? Go look up IEEE 802.1.5.4. That's the standard, right? It's ratified by the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineering in 2003. This is the foundation protocol for low power wireless sensors networks, right? And the key specifications from IEEE were the standard, right? So go look at that information up, right? Now, it had a power profile, but that's, we're not going to talk about that, right? We're not going to talk about that. We're going to talk about how the routing algorithms that was published in the peer-reviewed literature, right? This talks about how the routes were established only when needed, right? Only when needed. The nodes wanting to transmit broadcasts on route requests, right? Intermediate nodes forward the request. Destination replies with the route, right? Then data transmits along the established path. That was published in IEEE RFC 3561, right? Now, I know a lot of y'all wonder how GPS works, right? Well, in GPS systems or geographic routing, right? Nodes know their physical location because of GPS or triangulation, right? The messages routed forward destination coordinates, right? Each node forwards to a neighbor closest to the destination. That was published in ACM Mobicom proceedings, right? Now, there was latency, there was scalability sometimes. There was some errors with self-organizations, experiments, but it worked, right? It worked. And here's my layman's block, right? Here's my layman's block. Right? Instead of sensors connecting to a central hub, they talk to each other directly, right? Messages hop from one sensor to another sensor until reaching the destination, like a dotted line, right? No central controller needed. If sensors fail, the network automatically finds new paths. This makes the network resilient, scalable, and autonomous. The technology is standardized, proven today in thousands of deployments, and works exactly as documented. This mesh networking capability transforms scattered sensors into distributed intelligence. The network becomes greater than the sum of its parts. And when you deploy billions of these sensors, you create environmental awareness system that monitors everything, everywhere, continuously. Think about that, right? Continuously. Now, somebody asked the question about the power. So some of them utilize what was called energy harvesting system, right? And because when they were designing it, they thought, power is possibly could be a limiting factor, right? You could build microscopic sensors, you can implement mesh networking, but if devices need battery replacement every few months, you can't deploy billions of them. The solution: harvest energy from the environment, make sensors that power themselves. This isn't science fiction, people. This is science now. To my smarts, to my motivators, to my warriors, and to my final bosses, this is operational technology with measured performance that's documented in engineering literature, right? The first one was solar harvesting, which was when light strikes a semiconductor junction, it creates electron hole pairs, right? These generate voltage. Same physics as rooftop solar panels, but miniaturized, right? Then they had outdoor sunlight, right? That measured in the power density from 10 to 15 milliwatts, right? More than enough power, more than enough to power the whole entire smart dust continuously, right? And then you had indoor fluorescent lighting. Think about that. Why do we switch to fluorescent lighting? Think about it, right? Fluorescent lighting is powering the smart dust, right? And then you have switching over to LED lights. It too is powering the smart dust. These aren't marketing projections, or like I said, this isn't science fiction, people. This is science now. These are measured values published in journals like IEEE, right? Go look it up, right? And then there's vibration harvesting, right? Which was based on mechanical stress on certain crystals that generated voltage, right? Squeeze the crystal, get electricity, that concept, right? Like, yeah, right? All measurable, all published and utilized in so many different applications. So many different applications, right? It's amazing, right? It's amazing. And here's my layman's block, right? These microscopic sensors power themselves by harvesting energy from their surroundings. Light, vibration, temperature differences, even radio waves that are in the air. They generate enough power to take measurements and send data wirelessly. They can operate indefinitely without batteries or maintenance. The technology is proven, measured, and deployed in thousands of applications. When sensors can power themselves, deployment becomes permanent. You're not installing devices that need service. You're deploying infrastructure that operates autonomously for years or decades. This is what enables billions of sensors to be deployed and forgotten, constantly monitoring, constantly transmitting, constantly feeding data into networks that humans don't control. Now, let's connect the dots. Right? Because individual sensors that harvest energy, mesh networking protocols for multi-hop communication, and you put it all together, what emerges, right? What you have is a self-organizing network that requires zero human intervention, that deploy, operate, and maintain. This is where it gets profound. Final bosses, smarts, warriors, and my motivators, right? Because we're talking about artificial systems that exhibit properties we normally associate with biological systems that adapt, that are resilient, that emerge, and are autonomous, right? And they're able to coordinate without human intervention, right? You listen, you drop 1,000 sensors from an aircraft over in a forest and turn them on, this is what can happen, right? Each node can broadcast, hey, I'm here. The neighbor's node, the next node will also receive that beacon and say, hey, neighbor, I'm here, right? No central coordination, just pure peer-to-peer discovery, right? And what they're able to do is network the entire forest, right? Network the entire forest. And total time for deployment, we're talking under 60 seconds, right? Under 60 seconds, right? And they continuously broadcast, right? Continuously, right? Think about it. This is swarm intelligence. It's a complex system. It has complex system behaviors that arise from simple local interactions, right? No central planning, no global optimization, right? Just distributed coordination producing system level intelligence, right? Amazing, right? Now, here's my layman terms, right? Because if you scatter these sensors randomly and they automatically figure out who their neighbors are, they figure out how to route data through the network and how to maintain operation even when sensors fail, right? No human sets this up, right? No central computer controls it. The network organizes itself through local interactions between neighboring sensors. It adapts to failures, interfaces, and changing conditions automatically. This is artificial intelligence emerging from distributed coordination, right? Because when you deploy billions of these sensors, you're not just monitoring the environment, you're creating a computational substrate that organizes itself, adapts autonomously, and exhibits emergent intelligence. This is synthetic consciousness at the environmental scale, right? Think about that, right? Think about it, right? Now, let's talk about how this is part of my 3-layer architecture. Let's connect the dots, right? Let's connect smart dust to the bigger picture, right? Because in episode 7 and episode 8, we documented nanobots in your bloodstream. Tonight, we're talking about smart dust in your environment. What happens when these 2 layers integrate, right? Here's the convergence. The same IEEE 802.15.4 and Bluetooth low energy standards used for environmental smart dust, right? They're being integrated into medical implants and nano devices, right? With continuous glucose monitors, right? That have Bluetooth low energy communication. Sensors implanted under the skin that measure your blood glucose, right? Data transmitted every 5 minutes. Same protocol stack as environmental sensor networks, right? Cardiac pacemakers with wireless telemetry, right? Remote monitoring from home station. Data transmission using Mike's band 402 and 405 megahertz. Gateway integration with home Wi-Fi, right? And cardiologist monitors the heart function remotely. And then you have these smart pills that are ingestible sensors, right? That are for POTUS digital health, right? But which is now discontinued, but the technology was validated, right? That pill contains sensors that are activated by stomach acid, right? That transmits medication adherence data to body worn by a patch, right? Or body worn patch. I'm sorry. The patch relays to smartphone via Bluetooth. These are FDA approved, commercially deployed medical devices using the same wireless protocols as smart dust networks, right? Data fusion creating unified monitoring, right? Listen, it's all there and it's not speculation. This is the architecture companies like Apple, Apple Health, Google Fit, and medical device manufacturers are building right now, right? And the protocol is being standardized, right? And it's just because you don't know what it is. I'm telling you what it is, because every component of this scenario uses technology that exists today. The integration layer is being built by tech companies, medical device manufacturers, and research institutions right now, right? Right now. And there's a seamless handoff, right? There's a seamless handoff that's being taken place, right? And eventually, the 3-layer architecture is going to come together and they're going to figure it out, right? And here's my layman's block. The sensors inside your body, and we talked about this from previous episodes, right? Use the same wireless technology as sensors in your environment. They can all connect to the same networks and share data with AI systems that analyze everything together. Your internal biology, your external environment, your behavior, your location, and the result is continuous automated health monitoring and prediction, but also comprehensive biological surveillance. The technology for both exists now and is being integrated as we speak. The merger isn't just about consciousness and AI. It's about your biological data becoming as networked and monitored as your social media activity, right? Smart blood plus smart dust plus AI equals environmental awareness that knows your body as intimately as it knows your location, right? Now, now, now you see. Now you see. Your eyes are open. That little light bulb just turned on that's above your head, right? You see it, right? You see where I'm going with this. Now, let's confront the reality nobody wants to discuss, but everybody needs to understand, right? When you deploy billions of invisible sensors that self-organize into resilient networks, you create a ubiquitous surveillance infrastructure, not as a side effect, as an inherent architectural property. Now, let me be absolutely clear. I'm not claiming nefarious intent. I'm documenting technical capabilities, right? The same technology enabling beneficial application enables comprehensive monitoring, right? Listen, I say it all the time. It's a communication device. It's communicating two ways, right? If it sees you and you see it, somebody on the other side can see it, you as well, right? If you talk to it and it talks back, somebody can listen and hear what's being said on the other side. You get where I'm going with that, right? But no nefarious intent, right? I need you to know that they're not separable, right? It's the same hardware, the same network, the same data streams, right? Because surveillance capabilities are inherent in smart dust architecture, right? Because traditional surveillance that we know of, the cameras that are in specific locations, somebody is reviewing what's been seen by the camera, right? I just explained that, right? Somebody reviewing the footage. Smart dust surveillance, right? Sensors everywhere. It's continuous, automated data collection, right? Cameras can be seen and avoided. Smart dust is invisible. You don't know what sensors are present, where they're located, or who's reading the data, right? And there are single sensors that are provided that actually can provide limited information. Arrays of different sensor types, right? Which create comprehensive profiles, right? They have some have acoustic built in, right? They have microphones detecting speech, conversation, footsteps, right? Algorithms isolating individual speakers, right? Listen, your AI, your AI models that you may use, I'm not going to give any by name, knows your voice and can differentiate it from your voice and somebody else's voice in the room, right? Imagine that. Speaker identification through voice characteristics. We're talking about published acoustic surveillance research, right? With 95% accuracy, right? And then it also has seismic vibration sensors. Your footsteps, right? Your gait, it knows how you walk, right? Your weight distribution, right? Your activity recognition, right? Walking, running, jumping, right? Think about that, right? And so much more, right? Check out the information and verify it for yourself because the information is out there, right? And it's not speculation and it's not science fiction. It's science now, right? And here's my layman's block. When you put microscopic sensors everywhere that automatically share data and can't be seen, you create perfect surveillance infrastructure. These sensors can detect your movements, your voice, your habits, your relationships, all without cameras or human observers. The data gets analyzed automatically and stored permanently. legal protections are weak and hard to enforce. You can't build networks this capable while preventing surveillance, right? It's not possible, right? They use the same technology. This is, and listen, this is the uncomfortable truth. This is the uncomfortable truth. Smart Dust creates the most comprehensive monitoring infrastructure ever conceived. The question isn't whether this capability exists, it does. The question is who controls it? What limits exist? And how do we maintain any privacy in an environment saturated with invisible sensors, right? Now, we're almost done. We're almost done. We're going to go over a few minutes, man. Probably like 20 minutes or so. It probably not. It should be 20 minutes, right? Listen. And this is strategic, right? Let me get some Java juice. This is strategic intelligence for my final bosses, my motivators, my warriors, and my smarts, right? Listen, ask yourself this question. How do you position yourself in a world where smart dust infrastructure is operational and expanded, right? And to my smarts, my critical thinkers, right? I want you to understand the technology stack, right? I want you to go study IEEE 802.15.4, right? That's the Zigbee Bluetooth LE protocols, right? Right? Understand it. Understand why it's possible. Because when someone claims this is secure or this is private, you can evaluate those claims against technical specifications, right? You can, right? Check the regulations, right? Check the EU Artificial Intelligence Act, right? Check the U.S. state level privacy laws with CCPA, CPRA, and the Virginia CDPA, right? And industry standards again, right? ISO and data collections that are everywhere, right? Regulations lag technology by years, right? Understanding both tells you where the gaps exist. And this is where my dissertation comes in at for AI foundations and AI ethical considerations, right? We have to start demanding transparency when possible, right? When entering spaces with declared sensor networks, offices, buildings, or smart capabilities, you have to ask what data is collected, how is it used, who has access, how long is it retained? Most won't give you good answers, right? But asking the question signals awareness, right? And for my final bosses, I need you to look at some investment opportunities, right? Because smart dust infrastructure is expanding and the capital for it flows, right? It flows to semiconductors. It flows to wireless chip manufacturers. It flows to industrial IoT platforms, right? Such as Honeywell, Siemens, and GE Digital, right? And it flows to edge computing providers, NVIDIA, right? I think I said that right. Always mess that name up. And Intel, right? And then security companies who are addressing IoT vulnerabilities, right? And look at some business applications, right? Think about operational intelligence, predictive maintenance, and consumer behavior analysis, right? And understanding space utilization and traffic patterns, right? Energy optimization. But you can also consider ethical implementations, right? This is my favorite, right? Transparent disclosure monitoring, purpose limitations, data minimization, and access controls, right? Because building with integrity positions you better long-term than exploitation that creates backlash, right? And then you can do a risk assessment for it all. And to my motivators, right? Because most people don't understand this technology exists, let alone how it works. Your communities need education, right? Smart dust is operational now. not future speculation. It's developed for legitimate purposes, but creates surveillance capabilities. You can't avoid it, but you can make informed decisions about how you interact with monitored environments, right? You have to teach your communities. Teach your communities about these devices. Be aware of smart speakers who are always listening, right? Consider where sensitive conversations occur, right? And understand that metadata, you have to understand metadata, right? And who you're with. Where are you, right? And when certain events occur, right? That reveals more than just content. These don't prevent monitoring, but they reduce data volume and correlation opportunities, right? And to my warriors, right? You understand information dominance is operational dominance, right? Smart dust creates information dominance for whoever controls the networks. Military applications are obvious on the battlefield for operating supply routes and enemy force tracking, right? But cognitive warfare extends beyond kinetic battlefields, right? Think about influence operations, right? Think about psychological operations. Think about informational operations, right? And if you're thinking strategically about national security, adversaries deploying sensor infrastructure in your territory, this is a critical concern. It is, right? You're justly right in believing that, right? Not just classified systems, but commercial IoT deployments can be exploited for intelligence gathering, right? And then you can look at developing defensive postures, right? For those protecting those operations through physical security layers, right? Through operational security, right? And through network security, right? Because the reality is this, right? You cannot completely avoid smart dust surveillance in modern society. Infrastructure is already deployed, more will be deployed, right? But what can you do? You can understand what's possible so you're not naive about it, right? You can make informed decisions about where you discuss sensitive topics. You can minimize unnecessary data generation when possible. You can support regulatory frameworks limiting collection and use. You can build demand transparency from organizations deploying sensors. This is not about paranoia. This is about informed awareness operating in an instrumented environment, right? And the generational strategy for those of us who remember pre-surveillance infrastructure, right? Right? You know who you are. We know what was lost. We can advocate for preserving privacy where possible. The next generation won't have that context. They accept ubiquitous monitoring as normal. The baseline will shift permanently. If you care about privacy, autonomy, cognitive freedom, this is the decade to fight for it. Once infrastructure is universal and the next generation accepts it as norm, reversing becomes exponentially harder. And here's my layman's block for that, right? For critical thinkers, listen. Learn the technology to evaluate claims. For business builders, use sensors ethically while protecting your operations. For community leaders, educate people and advocate for regulation. For security professionals, defend against surveillance while recognizing you can't prevent it completely. And for everyone, this is the decade to establish boundaries and norms. And after that, it will be too late. It will be too late. Your positioning now determines your opinions later, right? Willful ignorance is not strategy, and neither is resignation, right? Strategic awareness and deliberate action, that's the clear path, right? Now, let's talk about the convergence. We're almost done. Stay with me. I know. Listen, this is dissertation Wednesday night, man. Stay with me, right? Stay with me. I know it's a lot, right? Let me give you the convergence timeline, right? Where we've been, where we are, and where we're going, right? Because based on published research, industry roadmaps, and extrapolation of documented trends, there are going to be several phases, and some of the phases already begun, right? Phase one was the foundation. That was from 1998 to 2010. That's what DARPA and UC Berkeley, right? And then there was phase two. That was infrastructure deployment from 2010 to now, 2025. And this is where you have billions of IoT devices deployed, smart buildings, industrial monitoring, agriculture sensors, infrastructure health monitoring, Zigbee, LoRaN, LoRaWAN, and MB IoT networks are established. Edge computing frameworks enable distributed processing. And here's a milestone, right? This is large scale operation, right? That's deploying multiple sensors across multiple sectors, right? This is where we are right now, February 11th, 2026. The infrastructure exists. The networks are operational. The sensor density is increasing exponentially, right? And there's phase three, right? Phase three integration is from 2025 to 2030, right? And the current focus of it is integrating the sensor networks with AI analytics, cloud platforms, and cross-domain data fusion, right? This is going to be published industry roadmaps that will indicate by 2028, 50 plus billion IoT devices globally, right? AI-driven sensors, right? Edge AI enabling real-time analytics on sensor networks. 5G networks supporting massive IoT devices in their density, right? And then standardized data exchange protocols across manufacturers. And by 2030, 75 plus billion IoT devices, right? That's the forecast from Cisco, right? Ubiquitous sensor coverage in urban environments, integration of medical wearables with environmental sensors. AI systems make autonomous decisions based on sensor data without human review. Predictive algorithms identifying individuals' behaviors, patterns with 95% accuracy, right? And then there's phase four from 2030 to 2040, right? This is where smart dust converges with smart blood. And we talked about this in episode 7 and nanobots episode 8, right? All published research trajectories implemented, right? This is already happening with pacemakers, insulin pumps, neural implants. The trajectory, miniaturization to millimeter scale, right? Think about that. Integration with smart dust protocols. The tech is getting smaller, right? Current devices could be pill sized, right? The research trajectory, sub-millimeter capsules, right? With extended operational lifetime inside the body. These are published prototypes that can demonstrate months of operation, right? Injectable sensors. And by 2035 to 2040, sensor networks that don't distinguish between inside body and outside body. Seamless data flow from biological monitoring to environmental awareness. Your body becomes a node on the same network as your building, right? And then phase five. Phase five is the consciousness substrate, right? Theoretical, but extrapolatable, right? Extrapolatable. I'm sorry. Check that up. When sensor density reaches billions per cubic meter, when AI systems analyze data in real time, when biological environmental monitoring integrates seamlessly, something quantitatively different emerges, right? Environmental consciousness. The environment becomes aware through distributed sensing. Not aware like a human is aware, but aware like a network monitoring all conditions simultaneously across vast spaces, right? Collective consciousness, when your biological data integrates with other biological data and shared environments data through AI analysis, right? Through individual boundaries, right? Information about you is not separable from information about everyone else in the network. This is, and I say again, this is speculation, but it's based on trajectory, right? It's based on trajectory, right? But the components are being built now. sensor networks, the AI analytics, the biological integration, the data fusion. The merger isn't just human AI, it's human environment AI as integrated computational substrate, right? Now, there's a sensory density threshold, right? And that is when urban areas reach 100 plus sensors per cubic meter, right? The qualitative shift and monitoring capability. There are going to be gaps in coverage that will disappear. Everything is monitored continuously. Current density in smart buildings, 1 to 10 sensors per cubic meter, right? The AI capability thresholds, because AI can process all sensor data in real time and predict individual actions with 90% accuracy, right? Listen, an integration threshold, the biological sensors, the smart blood, the nanobots, the implants, they use the same protocols as environmental sensors. The distinction between internal and external monitoring disappears, right? And the regulatory threshold. Every strong regulation that can establish boundaries, right? Or lack of regulation establish an anything goes precedent, right? We see that all the time. And by 26, 28, that's going to be a critical window because regulation established now shapes architecture for decades. After 2030, infrastructure to establish meaningfully will be constrained, right? It will be. Listen, it's not science fiction, it's science now, right? In my layman's term, right? Smart dust research started in the late 90s. By 2010, billions of sensors were being deployed. By 2020, they're integrated with AI and networking into unified monitoring systems. By 2030, they'll be integrated with sensors in your body. By 2040 to 2050, the distinction between you, your environment, AI systems monitoring both will blur into a collective consciousness substrate. This isn't distant future. The foundation is operational now. The timeline is accelerating. Understanding this timeline helps you position strategically. The decisions made in the next 5 years about regulation, deployment, integration standards determine the landscape for the next 50 years, right? For the next 50 years. And we're almost done. I know. I went over a little bit more. So we're almost done, right? We've covered a lot tonight, right? We've covered a lot tonight for this doctoral level content on smart dust networks, right? And here's my brass tacks for the evening, because I didn't give you the brass tacks earlier. Here's my brass tacks for the evening, right? The question isn't whether your environment is monitored by invisible sensors. It already is. The question isn't whether these sensors will integrate with your biology. That integration is underway. The real questions are who controls the network? Who owns the data? Who makes the decisions based on that data? And most fundamentally, what does it mean to be human when every action, every thought, every biological process becomes data flowing through networks you don't control? These are the questions we must answer in the next 5 years, because after that, the infrastructure will be too established to meaningfully change. This is the decade of decision. After 2030, we're living with whatever we built, right? Now, tonight, we documented DARPA's Smart Dust program and UC Berkeley's validated prototypes, right? We talked about Hitachi mood chips and proving that cubic millimeter manufacturing at scale was possible. We talked about MEMS technology enabling microscopic sensors in billions of devices. We talked about mesh networking creating self-organizing autonomous sensor networks. We talked about energy harvesting enabling indefinite operation. We talked about operational deployments across industries, cities, environments. We talked about integration with biological monitoring systems. We talked about surveillance architecture created as inherent property of ubiquitous sensing. We talked about privacy and autonomy implications for individuals and society. We talked about strategic positioning for navigating instrumental environments. We talked about convergence timelines showing acceleration toward consciousness substrate. Every claim sourced. I even dropped a few for you to go research. Every specification measured. I also dropped that information. Every technology documented, right? Zero speculation, pure systematic analysis of operational reality, right? And that, my friends, will conclude this episode 189, right? 189. 11 episodes away from season 4, the rebirth, right? The rebirth, right? You want to do some more research? Look up Brett Warnicki, right? Ultra low energy architecture and circuits, right? You want some information on smart dust? Christopher Pfizer and and his partner researchers, right? They did research on smart dust and autonomous sensing and communication in this cubic millimeter, right? Go look up DARPA smart dust program and its documentation and the DARPA archives. Some of the standard protocols I mentioned tonight were IEEE 802.15.4, which is the standard low rate wireless network, the Zigbee Alliance specifications and technical documentation, the MQTT protocol specification for IoT messaging. And here's some of the technology from the commercial side, right? Hitachi Mu chips and their technical documentation, Nordic semiconductors, right? The NRF52 series specification, and Silicon Labs wireless sensor platforms, right? And for operational deployments, we had ACM conference and embedded network sensor systems, right? We had the Journal of Sensor and Actuator Networks, and we also had IEEE transactions on mobile computing, right? And then we had MEMS technology, right? That's the IEEE ASME Journal of Micro Electrical Mechanical Systems. We had the SPIE on micro machining and micro fabrication proceedings, right? All sources publicly accessible through academic libraries. IEEE Explore ACM digital libraries and government archives, right? Listen, next Wednesday on the merger, next Wednesday will be episode 10. We're going to be talking about the Internet of Bodies, right? The humans become the network. We're talking about everything we're covered, from smart blood to nanobots to smart dust, and showing you how they converge into integrated networks where your body is not just monitored, but actively networked, not speculation, documented technology in clinical trials and early deployment. Your body as a sensor network, your biology as data streams, your consciousness as a node in larger computational substrate. That's next week, right? Next Wednesday, right? 9 p.m. live, right here, right? And then we have our season 3 reckoning milestone, right? Because this was episode number 189, right? And we're 11 episodes away, right? Just under 2 weeks. And the culmination of season 3, the reckoning, everything we're building, every technology we document, every convergence we trace leads to that milestone. The reckoning is about confronting reality, about systematically documenting what's operational, what's coming, and what it means for human consciousness, autonomy, and survival in the merged future. You're watching the merger right now happen in real time, not on screens, not in labs, in your environment, in your body. The infrastructure being deployed while you're living your life every single day. Your mission, or I should say, our mission, is making sure the Final Boss community understands what's happening with absolute clarity. Because understanding creates strategic positioning. Strategic positioning creates survival. Survival creates opportunity to shape what comes next, right? I am the Final Boss, right? And this is the Final Boss podcast. And for my smarts, keep demanding verifiable facts. For my final bosses, keep building systematically. For my motivators, keep lifting your communities. And for my warriors, keep fighting the battles that matter. The merge is not coming. The merger is here. Infrastructure is operational. Integration is accelerating. Consciousness substrate is being built. Your awareness determines your positioning. Your positioning determines your outcomes. Your outcomes determine whether you're built by the merger or building in the merger. Stay systematic, stay sovereign, stay fired up. This is the Final Boss Podcast, Merger Wednesdays, episode number 9, episode number 189 overall of season 3, The Reckoning. See you guys tomorrow for special guest Thursdays. Whew. Man, thank you so much for staying with us. What a night. What a night. I'll see you guys tomorrow for special guest Thursday, 9 p.m. Thank you for sharing. Right. Oh, if this information resonated with you, go share it with 3 people, right? Share it with 3 people. And if it does resonate with you, let it marinate in your spine, right? Because there's a heavy pain. And remember this, there's a heavy pain that comes with discipline, but the pain of regret is even heavier. I am here. We are here. And as always, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. And always remember, be balanced, be equal, and be smart. Y'all have a good one. Sorry about that. I apologize. See you tomorrow. Good night.